We're back here again. This is episode 5, and we're going to do a test. Let's see if everything is working here. See, we should be. Let's see. Yep. Episode 5, Crime Tales. This is something I do every once in a while just to give you stories from across the world, stories I wouldn't be able to cover because it's, from half the globe away, half the world away. So we go back in time, take it for what it's worth, a little entertainment, a little time to chat. Do um, ask you to subscribe. And on this channel, we do true crime, pop culture, a little bit of everything, as you can see. Try to upload 2 videos a week, a short here every now and then. Let's go. We're going to be talking to you today about William Aarons, if I'm pronouncing the name right, spelled H-E-I-R-N. I'm sorry, H-E-I-R-E-N-S, William Aarons. He's known as the Lipstick Killer. When William, we'll kind of jump around here, but when William George Aarons was arrested in 1946, many moons ago, close to 80 some odd years ago, right? Long time ago. Traveling that part of town, Chicago, try to put ourselves in there. He was arrested for burglary, and his classmates at the University of Chicago, they were quite shocked. He was a 17-year-old sophomore, by every indication, a good student, a regular churchgoer, and though shy and a bit on the prudish side, is what he was referred to, he was fairly well liked. But with his arrest, the police, they had halted a one-man crime wave that had included 3 murders on Chicago's north side. Josephine Alice Ross, 43-year-old widow, had died of stab wounds to the neck, apparently after surprising a burglar in her home. That was in June of 1945. In December, Frances Brown, 30, she was stabbed in the neck and shot twice, found dead in her apartment. Now, in Brown's living room, the killer had scrawled in bright red lipstick. He wrote, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." But the best efforts of the police failed to find the so-called lipstick killer. And in January of 1946, he had struck again. 6-year-old Susan Degnan murdered. Parts of her dismembered body were stuffed in sewers near her home. In an odd twist, the bodies of all 3 victims had been carefully washed clean of blood. None was sexually assaulted. 2 other women had been wounded by shots fired through windows. into their homes, and another was beaten and tied up by an intruder. The killings and attacks they had came amid a rash of burglaries in the area near the University of Chicago, that campus. Aaron's undoing came when he was caught at the scene of one of the thefts. He resisted arrest fiercely until he was knocked unconscious by a policeman yielding flower pots. But the only burglarized loot in his possession was a new souvenir oversized dollar. It was a dollar bill. Stolen goods worth thousands of dollars were found in his dormitory. However, an incriminating note signed George pointed to a possible burglary ring. For 3 days now, Aarons refused to talk until investigators took the unusual step. They gave him sodium pentothal, and that's a so-called, I never heard of this before, but that's a so-called truth serum. Now, under its influence, the suspect told the grisly details of the child's murder, but he blamed it all on an elusive friend named George Merman. An intensive search, well, they didn't find anyone by the name of George Merman. Under questioning, Aarons described feeling hazy or vague, or even blacking out at times of the crime. He entered people's homes, and he did this because burglary was his only source of sexual release. And he said he guessed that he probably had committed around 500 burglaries. 500. And the roots of Aaron's problems seemed to lie in his childhood, when he had been told that sexual contact was wrong and it had caused disease. Deeply ashamed of his own sexual impulses, he began sneaking into houses and stealing women's undergarments. He experienced orgasm when he put them on. He was already a practiced burglar and arsonist, and he was arrested at 13 for carrying a loaded pistol. He was sent to a special preparatory school where he did well academically, and he entered the University of Chicago at the age of 16. But he had kept breaking in to people's homes, even though he often left without taking anything but his own guilty pleasure. Now, investigators would quickly realize that George Merman was a fantasy, a second personality that Aarons developed in childhood to do all the bad things Bill did not dare do. In his confession, a later session, without the use of sodium pentothal. Aryans acknowledged that George was a concoction of his imagination. You can accept George as being me. A court-appointed panel of 3 psychiatrists declared Ahrens a sexual sociopath with maniacal tendencies, but legally sane. At the time of the crimes, the panel judge, the prisoner, knew right from wrong and knew that he was doing wrong. Ahrens, well, he was convicted of 3 murders and 26 counts involving robbery, burglary, and assault. He was sentenced on September 5th of 1946 to 3 consecutive life sentences for the murders, plus additional time for lesser offenses. Once in prison, his condition deteriorated until authorities moved him briefly to the state prison for the criminally insane. Ahrens improved, however, so much that in 1977 he had finally finished his interrupted college career. After 25 years of televised classes, correspondence courses, and prison education, he had become the first Illinois prison inmate to be awarded a college degree. As of 1992, I don't know if he's alive now, William Ahrens remained behind bars at the Vienna Correctional Center, the longest tenured prisoner in the state of Illinois. You know, all his girlfriends, they had called him the perfect gentleman. You know, when the police went into his room, his dorm, they had found surgical kits, which was most likely used to um, dismember one of his victims. That's an individual that you're happy is behind bars and probably has croaked by now. Let's take a look at it actually. Tell you what the final verdict is for Mr. Ahrens here. Yes, ding dong, the devil is dead. He died March 5th, 2012. Died of diabetes at the age of 83. don't know, it's, you don't know, you don't understand. I don't think you could ever understand what goes through some of these individual minds that are beyond crazy. And by every indication, this guy was on the right path. College educated, smart, but was just a bad, bad person. That would wrap it up for this edition. A little bit of a shorter edition. Stay tuned for all my videos. Some of them are coming your way right now in the next day or two. Keep that subscribe button going there, and you know I appreciate each and every one of you. Always open for suggestions. Until next time, I hope all is well. Ciao.